Welcome and good morning, everybody. Yep, we are still morning. This is the Buck Skill Show live. All week we're doing this. Lots of different lessons and about how your subjects relate to jobs and companies in your area and in the workplace in your future life. Today is business studies, and we have Klaus from ANT Telecom. So I'm going to hand over to Klaus, who's going to take over. Good morning, Klaus. How are you?
Good morning, Max. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And I hope the ones who are self-isolating there get over this relatively quickly so that we can all have a bit more fun. Obviously, business studies is loads of fun. I can't think of anything else which is more fun than talking about businesses. You may disagree, but maybe I can change your mind right now.
You got 30 minutes to change our minds, Klaus.
Well, I keep going then. Don't want to bore you with the detail. Jump straight into the deep end. What are the lessons objectives? We do know that in the UK, we are extremely good at building up businesses and being very creative. The UK is one of the best countries in that regard. So I'm hoping that some of you will be in that position soon. What I'm not hoping is that you will repeat what's happening in the past, which is that a lot of businesses fail, simply because creative minds are interested in the fun bits, and sometimes the boring bits gets lost. So I want to talk a little bit about how can you make sure that if you are building a business, it is resilient. It can withstand challenges even as big as COVID, which I will talk about a little bit later. And what is required when something like that happens and what skills are needed. I hope that's interesting for you. And I'm going to move on and not talk too much about me, but I want to give you a few things which I think might be relevant. It's not very relevant that I was born in Germany. I studied economics and my study was a bit of a mix between an apprenticeship and university. So I did an apprenticeship as part of my university studies. One important thing there, you need to find out, are you more a studious person or are you more someone hands on deck? And this should help you to guide you through your education and your career. Going forward, you probably can read what I've done. The more relevant thing is whenever you start your career and even before, I can see that the ones who are curious, the ones who put a little bit more in than what's required, the ones who try and develop, they will actually make it. That is not necessarily something you need to do, but if you want to move on with your career, then you're going to have to put the effort in. Now, I could have certainly done better. I know that now. If I would have done a bit more things I do now, I would have been better. But, hopefully you will do well. In terms of me, I like to be active. Skiing, football, anything active is good for me, and I like to read and also network and socialize, because when you talk to other people, you learn stuff. So if you don't have any questions to that, very briefly to my company, ANT Telecom. We were founded as a management buyout of Bosch Telecom UK. I was a director there. And we have now developed our organization to work in a fairly specific niche. We provide safety solutions and efficiency solutions to mainly UK companies. But some companies, they like us that much, they recommend us to their foreign locations and sites. So we have some business overseas, all the way up to Jamaica, for example, Malaysia. So we concentrate on the UK, but if someone really thinks we can help them, we try and help them wherever they are. So that's all about ANT. I'm not going in too much into these details, but you see some of our customers are well-known companies such as BOC, Mars, SSE, water companies, Diageo, whiskey distilleries, 30 off have our solution. So quite a few well-known customers. I haven't mentioned Eurostar, Network Rail. So although we are a small company, we can attract large organizations. Right. Now, I did put out some, preset work, and I don't know whether you had the chance to look at it. But just to set the scene, obviously, when the lockdown started, many companies were kind of in a state of shock. They didn't really want to progress their projects. They weren't sure what's happening to them. Can they survive? Their staff was at home, maybe not really set up for home working. So nothing really happened in the first few days. So now, what do you do as an organization? We have 25 people staff. We got to pay them. If we don't have customers to talk to and getting orders, we can't pay them. What's happening to them? So in such a situation, if you put yourself into our shoes back at the time, what would you do? Okay. I don't know whether you have any ideas or want to share any of the ideas you thought about. Might be interesting. If not, I carry on.
And guys, let me just say, if you do have ideas, remember, as Klaus asks questions as we go along, you can put your answers in the chat box and I'll relay them back to him. So use that chat box. And if you have questions for him, use the Q&A box as well. And we can get the discussion going that way.
Okay. Good. Let's move on. So the first thing, when you have a situation where you need to survive, and that works for startup companies, that works in a financial crisis, that works for COVID, but it should be something which goes through your organization while the organization develops. Survival is very important, and the most important thing for survival is cash. You can try that yourself right now or after the session at home. Try and figure out how much money do you need going forward to do what you want to do. Let's say the Christmas presents for the boyfriend, for the girlfriend, for the family. How much cash do you have coming in? How much cash do you have going out? I bet with you, most of you have a rough idea, but they don't look at that every time. As a business, we're going to have to know that. We're going to have to absolutely know how much cash is coming in. We're going to have to know in advance how much cash are we spending this month, next month, the months after, so that at a time when we need cash to maybe grow the company or to do something we need because of a challenge like COVID, we need to know how much of the cash can we spend and still be able to pay our wages and all our bills. Because guess what? If we are getting into a position where we can't do that, and maybe can't even go to the bank and borrow some cash, that's the end of a business. It's almost like you build lots of those domino stones up in a sports hall. You are all the way up to your 10,000s, almost finished, and someone tips one over. Everything is gone. All your efforts wasted. So you don't want to be in that position. So cash flow projections we do every month, and we do it for the whole year, and repeat that every year. Here is an example. I'm not going into detail. You can have the slides. You can look at that. Our cash flow chart looks a bit more complicated even than that. But if you're interested in business studies, try and do that regularly with your own cash. And you see the difference that will make. Obviously, by the way, we also know if we know we have surplus cash at the beginning of the year and it dwindles down towards the end, we can do something with the cash, we can invest it, and you really make the most out of the position you're in. Right, now COVID survival is not just cash. One thing which I find is very important, and all the companies who are now surviving, they have done that. As soon as you realize something is going to happen, and we knew that COVID is there, we didn't know exactly about the lockdown, but at the time, we thought about what solutions will customers still buy, which customers are still able to buy, which customers are still operating. So for example, if in our situation, we would have dealt with the events companies, with the pubs, with the restaurants, we would have known that all our customers suddenly wouldn't be able to do business with us because they have no business to do. Fortunately, we were in a slightly better position. We had some customers where we felt they still need us. They are just not able to make any decisions. So the second thing we did, we thought, has someone been there where we've been before? Where can we find stuff we can learn? With COVID, just go to the countries who had COVID before us, like China. So we looked at our Chinese suppliers. We looked at what we can find out what companies do in China. And for example, we brought in automated temperature monitoring equipment, cameras, which when you walk in, they pick you up, they detect your face, and they measure your temperature without you having to use a thermometer. And we made a very, very quick decision. Let's promote that to our customer base. We had enormous response, and suddenly the whole organization felt much, much better because suddenly we had customers to talk to and we got orders back in. So this resiliency needs to go through your whole organization. I myself need to be resilient and not put my head in the sand. Our staff needs to be resilient and work through the period where you don't get much business. And then somehow you need to bring optimism, creativity, and energy back into the company. Fortunately, we managed to do that because we added a product to our portfolio, which we very soon found out the customers really need that right now. I hope that makes sense. Now, once you survive, that's probably great, but don't sit back and relax. You now need to start to adapt to the situation and to grow again. And what you need to do there is continue doing the research, talk to your customers as well as employees, and keep everyone engaged, motivated, and work as a team, because as a team, we find out which of our solutions customers might still buy in a situation where they don't buy much else. And you can only find that out if you communicate. Very important, you have to have a culture where people want to engage, where people are happy if what we have been doing for the last 30 years doesn't work anymore. We need to change the way we are working. We need to adapt to home working, and probably people in a department have to do different things to help another department out because they don't have that much work on. Our engineering department, for example, at the beginning of lockdown, they weren't able to go and see customers because customers didn't want to open their doors at the beginning. So they helped the sales team to just call customers, make sure they are all right, and started conversations with them so we could find out how can we help customers, what can we provide them they actually need right now. The last bit, decisive and brave. When there is an opportunity coming up, you need to grab it, although you don't know whether it's going to work. So for example, we saw that a lot more people are working from home. We thought if we can provide a solution which helps organizations to look after their home workers, they they might want it. But we took a decisive and brave step to start working on that solution and start developing that solution without knowing whether we're going to sell it. So it's soon out there. We have the prototypes available with most of the features, but we will find out over the next few weeks how successful we will be with it. And you know, summing up the skills you need, you've got to be fairly analytic. You need to find out as much as you can about your customers, their challenges, what's their financial situation. No point in selling stuff to a sector who struggles financially. They need their cash to survive. They won't buy anything from you, and so on and so forth. And you have to be very creative and analytic. I hope that makes sense. And I think we are at the point where we can take some questions.
That made total sense, Klaus. And actually, there are some questions that are relating to that, because I do like the fact that you spoke about the business and lockdown and what's happened and how to adapt to those situations. Let me just pull up my sheet of questions that have been sent in. And also, guys, remember that if you have got questions for Klaus, please put them in either the chat box or the Q&A box so that we can ask him and then he can answer them for us. Don't be afraid to put those questions in. I have got some that we'll get started with. One of the questions, I suppose, is what has been the biggest struggle for the business during lockdown? And then with that, there's a second question that is, how did your company deal with your competitors during lockdown? And I suppose with what we just heard and what you just said about how you adapted the business and the solutions that you looked at, it would be good to know what was the biggest struggle.
Yeah, I mean, the first biggest struggle for most companies, luckily we knew we were fine, is cash, preserving cash and making sure you have enough cash reserves to get through a lockdown where potentially you get no business. So once we knew that, we needed to work out how do we get business. Now, I still think the most important thing is to re-energize your staff and your organization, because if we would have gone into lockdown and we wouldn't have known what to do, the sales guys would have had no conversations with customers, worried about when the next paycheck comes in. That would have left a massive dent to repair. So the first thing we needed to do is to re-energize the organization, to tell them that we're gonna get through, and to give them ideas and engage them in activities we were doing in order to get through it. So the sales team was very early on involved in finding out what can we sell, where do we look at, and they helped us also to very quickly check with their customers if we were to do body temperature monitoring solutions with cameras, would that be something you're interested in? And from the feedback they gauged, they got the energy and said, well, I had great conversations with customers. They really want that stuff. So we made a quick decision, bring it into our portfolio, start putting all the building blocks together, propose them. We bought a camera so that we could demonstrate it well. And we had a brilliant turnover in May where other people struggled.
That's really good. There's some good examples there. Remember, this is a business studies lesson, and I suppose we've got two really good questions that have come in that relate to each other. But with what you've just explained there, obviously in terms of business, you look to make sure that your business before COVID, before you knew that COVID was going to happen, that your business was in a good position and in a healthy position, and you've put those safety blocks in place, shall we say. COVID has hit. Then you've utilized the things that you've got, looked at what the competitive market says is needed, and then gone into invest in those. But you've been able to do that, I suppose, because of the work that you did before COVID with your business and making sure that cash flow was in place.
Absolutely correct.
It had a solid base. So
absolutely correct.
So then we've got two students that are asking, what would you do if you fall into debt due to COVID? And the other one is, did you have any financial problems? And if so, how did you deal with it or stop it? So they're basically very similar questions there.
Yeah, very difficult. What would you do when you fall into debt? Now, the one thing you don't want to do is get into debt just because it's the last option you have to survive. If you don't know that you can rebuild your business, there is no point in you putting debt on, because you're ending up having to fold your business, but with more debt. If you realize you have to put debt on and you don't see how you can carry on with your business, say, for example, a pub who is at their last legs and they know the lockdown will go for another 3 months, it's probably not much point putting debt on if you don't know that you can rebuild the business and then survive and pay back your debt. So cut your losses is probably one of the first things. If you, however, know that you need the debt only for a short term in order to re-energize your business, maybe turn it around, then do it. A friend of mine who runs a company, he happened to work with scientists to develop a product which cleanses the air. They found out it cleans COVID out of the air. Well, they took debt on to manufacture some of those products because they felt if we get into that business, we get the money coming in, pay the debt off, and more. So it depends on the circumstances. What was the second question I probably haven't addressed?
No, you have, because it was, did you have any financial problems? And if so, how did you deal with it or stop it?
No, we didn't. Obviously, we used the financial instruments within reason which were available to us. Not all our staff had work, so we used furlough. We used the free business loans, which we only intended to bolster our cash reserves and pay back before interest comes in. So you do everything what's available to put yourself in a slightly better position. But before putting on debt, I would need to know that I'm definitely certain I can pay back.
And there is another question that's coming, is in this situation, who could help you with your debt? I think you've started to address that. So if you were a business and you did need to go into debt, let's say it was for the good reasons, like you said, you know that going into debt is going to help your business survive and you will be able to repay that debt. So who would you go to? Who could help with your debt?
I mean, certainly under normal circumstances, it's the bank. In this particular situation with COVID, there were lots of help out there from the government with the furlough scheme. So they don't, I mean, in a way, we don't take on debt through the furlough scheme, but we can get the government to help us pay the wages of our staff. They paid 80%. And we knew we had enough cash in reserve, so we carried on paying 100% to all staff, even the ones who were on furlough. The other things you could do, which stops you from taking debt on, is to, in worst case scenarios, have an agreement with your staff, and maybe they all see the sense in cutting down their hours, get a little bit less money, but make sure the company survive and they still have a job. So banks, you go to banks, and potentially also to other investors. It's important to do the research because there are some smaller banks out there who might be better suited to you. And then organizations like Buckinghamshire Business First can also help.
Brilliant. Now let's think about, you showed us at the beginning your career progression and how you went through your life and how you've ended up where you are now. There's a couple of points that I want to address that Klaus mentioned, and he did say at the beginning, think about whether you are more technical or whether you are more book oriented or whether you're more practical oriented, and think about, because in the UK now we have more apprenticeships that are becoming available, which are useful. Klaus benefited from the fact that, if I heard correctly, that you were able to do an apprenticeship when you were younger, and this has helped you out. But then somebody has asked, what qualifications did you need for your job? Now, obviously, you started it and rose your way through. And you mentioned about the extra work that is necessary to put in to further yourself. Mm-hmm. So what qualifications did you need for your job?
Yeah. For my job, I started as a trainee at Bosch Telecom, and the entry criteria there was you had to have a degree. And I had a degree in economics. But I want to widen that a little bit because for a lot of jobs these days, I would almost say for all the jobs, it should be the situation. Let's say for a lot of jobs, all the entrepreneurs, all the business owners, the managing directors I talk to, they look at attitude, they look at soft skill. So it's more important who you are as a person and whether you can prove that you have the right attitude, simple things like turn up on time, be able to communicate properly, work in a team, adapt. These are skills I find much, much more important. Yes, of course, if you have a degree, it's better if you than if you don't. If you have a better grade at school, it's definitely better. There are still entry criteria, but also work on your soft skills. Use opportunities in the schools, whether it's programs like Duke Edinburgh or other career-related programs your school offers. Use those to develop and polish your, we call them soft skills. I think I wouldn't be where I am just simply because I had a degree. It's all about being curious, trying to learn, trying to improve, engage with people, and treat people well, because that comes back to you.
Really good advice there, Klaus. And when we talk about soft skills, for those students out there that are wondering what we're talking about when we say soft skills, it's what Klaus pointed out. It's that teamwork ability. There are so many jobs as a young person, or so many things as a young person that you can do, because you may be sitting there thinking, okay, well, it's great that Klaus and Max are saying, oh yeah, get some soft skills, but they work, they have jobs. How would I do it? Think about what Klaus said, the Duke of Edinburgh scheme. It leads you into team building situations. You might have to lead people. You might have to be led by people, but you have to work in collaboration. At school, when you work on different projects, you may have to work with other people and you have to overcome obstacles and you learn from them. And remember, when you do all of these things, it's not about whether you were successful or not in terms of whether the project was a success or not in terms of the result. The project is successful if you come up against obstacles and together you either overcome those obstacles or you learn from those obstacles that you come up against. That is also how to be successful in these things. And it's important to think about, what do I do outside of school or college that is going to help me? I run outreach sessions for students across the UK, and I work with many different companies across different sectors. And it always comes back down to what Klaus said. It's those soft skills that are transferable. How do you work with other people? How do you collaborate? Do you have empathy for other people's situations? Are you able to lead, or are you happy to be led, but are still a good team player? Those things will help you. Sports will help you with that. Working at school on projects, volunteering will help you with that. Duke of Edinburgh will help you with that. All of these things that Klaus said. And those are important skills for businesses. We've got one last question, Klaus, because it's 11:44. I'm conscious of time. Yeah. Somebody has asked today, what is the chance of going into debt as the years go on?
For us at ANT?
Yeah.
If it's up to me, no. I would only go into debt if, for example, I would buy and acquire another company, which we've done in the past. And I would know there is revenue coming in over time, which helps me to pay back the debt. Think about that. If you were to buy a house, you want to make sure you can pay the mortgage going forward. If you have a job, which helps you to pay the mortgage, buy the house. If you don't get into debt, because it's much, much harder to come out of it. Shall I do a quick summary?
Go for it.
It's all here. First important choice. You want to do what you enjoy, because what you enjoy, you are automatically good at. So make sure you take the advice and develop your soft skills, because if you have those and your competitors applying for the job don't, guess what? You get the job. And you can choose which one you want. Don't stop there. Constantly try and improve. Ask questions, speak to other people, be curious, ask, learn, network, read. I started a bit too late with networking in the way I do it right now. If I would have started earlier, I would have been further than I am before. Start as early as possible, get on LinkedIn, build your profile, and engage on LinkedIn. And then important as well is if you want to build your own company, make sure you get the culture right. And one of the things I always kind of tend to look at as a motto, people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. If you make people feel good about what you do and how you do it, they will come back to you and not to someone else.
Really valuable point. People don't remember what you said, but how you made them feel. Remember that, and that will take you a long way. I 100% agree with what Klaus has said there. And I think that's a very appropriate time to say thank you to Klaus for coming along today to present. Thank you for the information that you've relayed back to the students. Thank you to the students for engaging with questions as well. Obviously, I had those from the Misborn School, which were fantastic, and those other students today that I think from the John Collett School who have added their questions. So thank you so much. Thank you, Klaus. That's been great. And hopefully everybody will have a good morning.
Yeah, thanks.